All right, so today we are talking about story elements, different pieces of stories that most stories have all of these things, right? Okay, so what are story elements? Story elements are an important part of a story. When we pay attention to the story element, it helps us to learn all we can about a story. There are 5 story elements. We have characters, setting, problem, solution, moral or theme. We're going to talk about all of those today. The characters, whoa, here are the people in the story, right? A lot of the times they are people like you or me, but characters can also be objects that act like people, and characters can also be animals, right? Take a minute and try to think of an example of a story where the character is an animal. Okay, or what about if it's an object? Okay. One example I like to use for object, if you've ever read Beauty and the Beast or even seen the movie, there's all those different things in the castle that are under a spell, but they're a character, right? Mrs. Potts and Chip and stuff like that. Of course, animals are easy, right? Curious George, and there's lots of different characters that are animals. Okay, so examples of characters. Here's some from the story Cinderella. We have our main characters. We have Cinderella, the fairy godmother, the stepsisters, the prince, right? If you've seen this, you've probably seen, I think this is the one where there's little mice that help her out, right? And those are an example of an animal that's a character in this story. Okay, so these are all the different characters from Cinderella. Easy enough. Now, a setting is the place where and when the story takes place. Okay, here's a picture of this castle, right? And that would be the place where the story takes place, that castle and the surrounding area and the forest maybe. Okay, here are some other examples of settings. Okay, we have where the story takes place: enchanted forest, the jungle, a cottage in the woods, on a farm, a big city, right? These are all places, different places that story could take place. And of course, the other part of setting is when the story takes place. Is it long ago? Is it in the future, hundreds of years from now? Or is it in present day? Is it now? Another element of a story is the problem. The problem is that situation that the characters are facing in the story, right? Usually there's not a whole lot of stories where there's no problem. Something has to be happening that they need to fix, right? Some examples of problems in stories: they might be solving a mystery, or the problem could be that they're poor, or they have fears, or they're always getting into trouble, or they're facing evil, right? So these are all problems in the story. And of course, you can't have a problem without a solution. The solution is how the characters in the story, how they solve their problem. Just like you have a math problem for school and your job is to solve it, right? Some examples of solutions in stories might be going to the ball, or finishing the task, doing the right thing. Could be catching the bad person, or facing your fears. Okay, so these are all some of those things that were solutions to the problems I mentioned earlier, right? I know if you thought about different movies you've seen or different books you've read, you could probably think of a couple different problems and the solutions, how that was solved, right? Now, there's something that we take away from this as a viewer or a reader, and that's the moral or the theme. The moral or theme is the idea that runs through the story. It often might teach a lesson. Okay? So maybe you're saying, what are you talking about, morals or themes? Some could be that dreams can come true, right? They got to go to the ball, or true love conquers all, hard work pays off, be true to yourself, or that problem of evil, right? The good defeats evil, right? All important morals or themes. So now that you know the 5 story elements, characters, setting, problem, solution, and theme, don't forget to look for them when you read. Okay? And so now that you have all these 5 story elements in your brain, when someone's asking you about a book you're reading or that you just read, you can tell them more than the title. You could think about the characters and the setting and the problem, and you could share that information with them. If you liked the book, you could recommend the book. Please don't tell them the solution. They have to read that on their own. You don't want to ruin the book for anybody. So, your media assignment for the week is to get a book to read, and it might be one you've read before, but read it again and discuss with an adult some of these elements of the stories. Like, identify these elements in that book you're reading. Okay? That's a great thing to do. That's how we as humans share the things we're interested in, right? We break it down into pieces, into these little elements, and it helps us understand it, but it also helps us share it with other people, right? Some of my favorite books are the ones that I always share with you all. So there you go. Your assignment this week for media isn't going to be to print up anything or submit anything. It's just to have a conversation with one of those adults in your life about a book you're reading right now or a book that you're going to be reading this week. Okay? It can be something you've read before. That's totally fine. If it's a chapter book, maybe it's just about a particular chapter in a book. But your job is to talk with one of the adults in your life there about the different elements of that story, okay? Even over dinner, like, oh, here's the character, this is the setting, this is the problem, right? Discuss what you're reading with people in your life. It's a great way to connect. All right, you all, take care, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.